What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Point Forward Podcast. Myself, Iguodala, and my main man, Evan Turner.
Yo.
And I know Evan, I was talking to Draymond during the parade, and he was asking what's going on with Point Forward Podcast because one of our members was missing. And I said, Evan has some things to do. And and Draymond says because you're a Celtics fan. So I'm just saying.
I would have showed up for sure. I didn't want everybody being like, he didn't win one, now he's on our bus. Like, I wanted to make sure.
That's why you didn't come?
To keep it a being with you, to be honest with you. I'm like, nah, I would have showed up. I was like, yeah, I guess I would have showed up. I had nothing to do on a Monday. It would have been straight. But, yeah, that's why I didn't show up. I didn't want to be in the way.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, Evan, but this week is Warriors week. So when you win a championship in the fashion that we did, in the fashions we did at the S, we can enjoy this week. So we're going to kick off Warriors week with a guy who's been around the block a few times with winning championships. 9 rings in 27 years. Only person to win 4 straight NBA titles as a player. Highest career three-point percentage of all time. And he's got the best three-point shooter of all time. I don't know. If you were the best three-point shooter in percentage-wise of all time, Evan, would you say someone else is a better three-point shooter than you?
Me personally, no. But I can see how you could argue it considering, who we're talking about. But, I mean, the numbers are numbers. You know what I'm saying? Analytics is everything.
The man, the myth, the legend is here. Coach Steve Kerr, appreciate you for stopping by and just really excited to have this conversation with you. I know you've had many conversations. I know you've seen Draymond podcasts. So getting a chance to see a different lane of the podcast world, but, same goals Draymond and I have. So welcome to the show and appreciate you.
Appreciate you having me.
Now, how many podcasts have you done?
I've done... This is my 3rd one in the last 2 days. So
really?
So yes. you did Old Man in the 3?
No, I did Zach Lowe yesterday.
Oh, Zach Lowe. He was asked for everybody.
Did Tim Kawakami today with The Athletic here in the Bay.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, but I'm cutting it off here. I can't be that guy. I can't do like 12 podcasts.
No, that's
You're
perfect.
right.
That's even better for us. So we appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna take you down a totally different path. You don't know Evan quite as well as I do, but Evan's a close friend of mine, and he wasn't Kuminga, but he had some Kuminga in him. You and I know what that means. So I hazed him pretty well, and we turned into really close friends from the hazing of his hard-headedness.
Did you guys play together?
Yeah, we played together
in Philly.
Oh, in Philly. Okay.
Yeah, he was my rookie.
Yeah.
Under Doug. We both had Doug.
Oh, yeah, Doug, yeah. Evan, I remember scouting you. I was when I was a GM of the Suns, I went and saw you play at Purdue. I saw you play a home game at Purdue.
Oh, wow.
No, I mean, would you go to Ohio State or Purdue?
I went to the Ohio State.
Yeah, you went to Ohio State. I saw you play at Purdue when you were at Ohio State, and you had a big game, and loved your game coming out. We weren't picking anywhere near high enough to get a shot at you, but loved watching you play.
I appreciate that, Steve. I mean, growing up in Chicago, obviously 97, I remember that. And then obviously the speech at the parade was even better, both in 97 and 98. So definitely appreciate everything you've done as well. So it means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to get into that with the interview, but I think we should start with us just winning the title, the 4th one. And the question is, was this the hardest one, or how would you sum this one up?
I think it was the most unlikely one. The first one in 15, even though we hadn't done it before, we won 67 games. I mean, we were the favorites going in. We just hadn't done it.
Yeah. Right.
And then, when we had KD, it would have been a disaster if we didn't win it, you know.
Right.
And so this one was different just because a lot of injuries, a lot of adversity, a lot of unknowns, counting on a lot of young guys who hadn't been there before. Really not much of a, second half of the season, probably 500, over the last 30 or 40 games.
Mm-hmm.
So this was, I think this was the most unlikely one, but we got on a run, man. We knew, like, if we could just get healthy, if we could get our group back, that we had a chance. And man, it was fun. It was fun to just watch all you guys, and we got better with each round of the playoffs, and that was pretty amazing.
Now, Steve, I seen you guys in Brooklyn to start the season. I feel like it was back in November. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you said you weren't too sure because guys were super injured and everything. But I saw Dre after the game. I remember being like, I think y'all are going to win it all. I thought just with the chemistry alone, just what Steph was doing, no offense to Katie or James, but in New York, the game was over by 20-something. Like, by halftime, it was like a 20-point lead. You know what I mean? Like, did you ever see glimpses throughout that year where you're like, I'm getting a little tingle, or no, like nothing?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we started out, I think we were 18-2 after 20 games. And, we went into Phoenix and beat them on Christmas Day without several guys. And we went to Utah the next week, beat the Jazz. And they were at the time, right next to us in the standings. We were the three best teams in the West really early on. And winning those two games, it was pretty apparent, like we could compete, with anybody. But like I said, the second half of the year, things kind of went south on us. So it was, by the time we started the playoffs, it was, I think, there were a lot of question marks, but we knew we had it in us because of the way we started.
Now, I got an interesting question for you. I don't think we've ever talked about this. We were 4-10 in the regular season versus Denver, Memphis, Dallas, and Boston combined. And the analytics say that it's the worst record all time for a champion against their playoff opponents. Now, we've had a lot of conversations about Memphis throughout the year, and then my history with Memphis. And Clay's been very vocal about it. Draymond has had a lot of fun on Twitter about it. But are you aware of kind of like that back and forth as it's happening as a coach, or is this something that you don't pay too much attention to?
I knew every time they booed you, every time you touched the ball, it's like, okay, this is real. And obviously I remember, what happened when we traded you and then you didn't play for them, and they, I remember the whole story, but it did kind of surprise me that they kind of held a grudge against you, a couple years later. But, I think I didn't know that stat that you just said. I hadn't thought of that we had such a bad record against the four teams that we played. On the other hand, all that stuff is you have to take it all with a grain of salt, because I don't think we were fully healthy for many, if not any of those games. So I don't know. It just felt like a clean slate for us once the playoffs started.
Well, when you started the playoffs, you brought Steph off the bench. So you think that set the tone for the whole playoff run? And what do you think that says about Steph? He didn't trip or anything? Obviously Steph.
Yeah, I mean, I gave him a choice. I told, because he had a 20-minute restriction his first game. And so I told him, this is how the minutes would play out for you if you started versus how if you came off the bench. And typically,
want to shoot your 20 shots the first 10 minutes, or like the second 20. Yeah,
exactly. But typical Steph, he just said, no, it sounds way better to come off the bench. That way I don't have to sit for too long in between my minutes. And it never even entered the equation that like this would be a blow to his ego or anything. And honestly,
no,
go ahead.
No, because it's kind of like, we throwing you some softballs, but Evan, let's keep it 100, right? So remember when remember Allen Iverson was like, I'm a starter and I'm not coming off the bench.
Yeah, this is Memphis.
Right?
Right.
He named all his accolades. He named all his accolades, and he says, "I'm not a player that comes off the bench. I'm a starter." What did Popovich do the next time the Spurs played after Allen Iverson made those comments? He brought Tim Duncan off the bench. No one remembers that.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
No one remembers that. So, we've had a very interesting year with guys getting hurt, guys coming back, trying to figure out certain lineups. Loon comes off the bench. JP comes off the bench. Will Steph come off the bench? And we're just trying to figure it out coming late in the season. And you spoke about how Steph is like Tim Duncan. But, I'm always watching what's going on. I'm watching everything. Steph comes off the bench, and it's, how what Draymond says, it's a pecking order, and it starts with that guy, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a little bit of a message saying, all right, fellas, I'm going to come off the bench, but I'm just letting y'all know this is what we need to do to win. If you got to come off the bench, you got to come off the bench. So I just loved him for that, but I'm like, no one was paying attention. Like, Loon and I are always next to each other in lockers talking about, what's that mean or why he decided. I'm like, listen, Loon, it's bigger than that. And like Steph gets it. And that's one thing people don't really recognize about him is that he's really for the team. Yeah.
No, that definitely set a tone. But, not trying to blow smoke, but like you set the tone, 7-8 years ago when I first became coach and I asked you to come off the bench. You had never come off the bench for a single game. You had played like 1,000 NBA games or something. Never come off the bench. And I asked you what you thought about it, and you were not thrilled about it.
I called him. I wasn't thrilled neither. I'm like, what the fuck? Do they not compete anymore? Like,
to me, it was just from my own basketball experience, like in Chicago when as a player, Tony Kukoc came off the bench and it was powerful, and then playing with the Spurs, Manu Ginobili came off the bench and it was powerful. Yeah. And it helps all the other guys who are coming off the bench, the second unit, to have a great player playing with them. And I knew all that. And so I felt like this made a lot of sense, but it was a hard thing to bring to you, Andre. It was not easy because I was a brand new coach and you were an all-star and an Olympian. And so that was kind of my first test as a coach. Like, is this guy going to listen to me? And in a lot of ways, it was the first test for our team too. Like, because you guys were already really good, but we were trying to get to the next level. And yes. So I thought that was a big part of our evolution as a team when you agreed to it. You weren't thrilled about it, but you agreed to it. And it took a little bit of time, but you eventually really settled into the role and thrived in it.
How do you approach that energy? Do you approach it the same way when you have to sit somebody like Draymond down? Like, not in like a funny sense, but in a realistic sense, and be like, hey, I know what your history is. I know how much experience you have, and this is very, very important. But, when you approached it and you went into the finals and had to make a few adjustments, like, were you like, or you just look at hey, we got to win. It's a business.
I mean, you got to win. And I've been here now 8 years, so I know all these guys so well. I didn't really think much about it when I took Draymond out in Game 4 because that unit was not doing well. So I was really looking for a shift, and I was thinking I'll just take him out for a minute or two and then get him back. But you guys know this, like in the NBA, if you find a group that works, you stay with it, and it doesn't matter who's on the floor, and you can't worry about anybody's feelings being hurt or anything like that. And so when that group started to play well, I wasn't paying any attention, to the bench. But Andre, I know you were down. I've heard, since then, that you were there and you were talking to Draymond and making sure he was staying ready. And sure enough, when the run ended, I think he only sat for 3 or 4 minutes. But when the run kind of ended and we went back to him, he was great. He made huge plays down the stretch, and it all worked out.
Now, I got a question for you in terms of Draymond with the Boston fans. And I thought about it because his son's in the stands. Like, his son is very coherent, smart kid, and he's aware of what's going on. And not to say it's the same and compare it, but, talk to us about, I don't know if many people know about your experience playing against Arizona State while you were in college. What, like, was there any parallels to that, or did that come to mind when you were like kind of hearing what was going on? Because Boston is a great arena and a great crowd, but when it's like that, you know, you start to second think about like, you know, what are we really doing out here? Are we playing basketball or is it something different?
Yeah, I thought they crossed the line. I mean, I'm all for booing guys, cheering for your own team. The appropriate cheer is, if you want to go down that path, is so and so sucks, so and so sucks.
Right.
You want to say that. That's when they were saying "F you, Draymond," like 20,000 people. I thought of Draymond's kid too, DJ, 5 years old, sweet kid, like the nicest kid. I mean, every time he sees me, he's like, "Hi, Coach Kerr." He's like he's the greatest little guy. He comes to practice all the time. The sweet and innocent little guy, and he's got to sit there and watch as his dad gets cussed out by 20,000 drunk fans. Like that's, people don't think of it in those terms, like when you're watching from the outside. And I do think it rattled Draymond a little bit, because that's pretty extreme. And the incident you were referring to was when I was in college, Evan. My dad was killed in a terrorist act, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And it was in the Middle East, and so we played at ASU, and it wasn't a lot of fans, but before the game, several fans, like probably drunk, they started chanting PLO, PLO, for the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and number one, they were misinformed. The PLO had nothing to do with the incident, but number two was like, holy shit, like really, you're going to go down this path? Like we're just playing a game, and so you guys have probably seen it occasionally where fans just cross the line, and it's unfortunate, but it happens occasionally. And I thought Draymond handled it well. He played great the last few games of the series and bounced back in a really, really big way.
So you've seen the league from many different angles. I think you might be the first of its kind. I know Doc Rivers has been on those levels as well.
I mean, Danny Ainge has done a lot, damn near everything you possibly think of.
Isaiah Thomas too. But you were a player, GM, announcer, head coach, and you were an owner, right? How did that ownership stake work? Or was that? Am I correct? Am I accurate in stating that?
I had a very small piece of the Phoenix Suns. It was the Robert Sarver was a University of Arizona grad, and when before he bought the Suns, he was trying to actually start a franchise in Las Vegas, and Lute Olson was on the board of Robert's bank in Tucson. And so Robert told Coach Olson, he said, "Hey, I want to get involved in the NBA. Do you have anybody who could help me out?" And so Lute sent him to me. I took Robert to New York to visit with David Stern. David Stern said to him after his presentation about Vegas and the expansion team in Vegas, Stern said, "You're like the 10th person who's come in here to propose Vegas. We're not doing that right now, but you should look at the Phoenix Suns because they may be for sale." And so I knew Jerry Colangelo because I played for the Suns for a year. And so I took Robert to Phoenix thinking like nothing would ever come of it. And like within 2 weeks, he had bought the team and offered me an investment piece in the team. So I put money into it. I became a consultant for a few years, and then eventually became GM. And then when I left there, I had to become coach of the Warriors, I had to sell the ownership stake. So I've kind of seen it all in the NBA. I've seen every angle of this thing.
Yeah. Well, you played for 2 dynasties and coached another one. Obviously, the Bulls, one of the best, the best team ever. San Antonio Spurs, a noble team, and then of course the Golden State Warriors, a generational team. What's the differences? Are there any similarities? What's the differences? What was your favorite part about it? And lastly, who was the best player out of all those teams? Or if you can give me a top 3 or 4. Or 5.
Nah, don't ask. Well, besides number 1. And number 2, too. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of great players.
Yeah, a lot of great players. I think the similarities are Bulls, Spurs, and Warriors. All 3 are great two-way teams. Like you can't win a championship without being a great two-way team. Chicago was unbelievable defensive team. Actually kind of ahead of their time, like with all the switching that goes on now. We started Ron Harper, Scottie Pippen, MJ, Dennis Rodman, and Luke Longley. And 1 through 4, those guys would switch everything. And teams didn't really do that back then.
And they were big too.
What's that?
Physically, they were huge. Like the
huge.
Guards were big. Everybody.
Yes, and even Rodman guarded Shaq in the East Finals when Shaq was with Orlando and held up. Held up pretty well. And same thing with the Spurs. I mean, David Robinson, Tim Duncan. You had the front line was just dominating defensively, and our Warriors teams have been top 10, I think, pretty much every year. For the last decade. So that's what it takes. I mean, that's why everybody is looking for, two-way players. And the more two-way guys you can fill your roster with, the better you're going to hold up in the playoffs. So that's the common denominator. And then the other thing is just superstardom. You got MJ, you got Tim Duncan, you got Steph Curry. Like if you got to have, I think, to have a real chance year in and year out, you got to have one of the top 5 players in the game, and we had that in all 3 places.
Yeah. Now, did you know Steph was the superstar, like that superstar, when you first took the job?
No, but I knew I had met him a couple times, and just knowing, Dell, and I knew he was a special human being, and I knew he was an incredible shooter. So I figured he was going to be an all-star, but what appealed to me at the time was that I knew how coachable he would be. And so it's, and that's everything as a coach. If you have guys who are willing to be coached, then you can do your job. Then you can be yourself and get the job done. But I didn't know he'd become this. Yeah. Did you know, like when you signed with the Warriors?
I played with Steph in the 2010 World Championships, and people forget that. And he wasn't like playing much. I think that might have been after his second year in the league. Like he was still super young, so he was trying to he was still getting his feet wet. And against those Euro players, it's a lot different, as you know. It seems like people don't know this, but the Euros give Steph like that trouble. Like I had problems with like Nick Young's and Michael Beasley's, like those second tier guys who could get 30 at any given night, but then it's like they're not as consistent as the superstars. I always struggle with those guys. And when I would watch Steph, those Euros always gave him, like, they were quirky, so it threw him off, like his timing. What's my man, Rubio would be like one guy, or Calderon would have solid games. I'm like, why do all the Euro guys have? So when we played in the World Championships, like we saw Steph's weaknesses. And I was like, okay, we know he's a great shooter, but he's going to have to tighten up his handles. He's going to tighten up his passing. Like, I was just kind of like, scouting him. But then when we played him in the playoffs, and that's the first time he did the shot in front of the bench, and he looked away, our bench was talking crazy to him, and he shot it and turned around, told him to shut up, and then went in. And that whole series, I'm like, oh, this guy's got the ultimate confidence. And then, as you know, when a player has the ultimate confidence like that, it's coming from the organization and the coach. And that's where I was like, okay, I want to enjoy playing basketball. Like, these guys are playing carefree. And, of course, the turnovers, you got to tighten things up, but his confidence was on 1 trillion. But I still didn't know until after the first year we won it. Like, the dude I didn't realize he was going to be that different. But he works, like, you don't know how hard he works until you see him up close. And you're like, oh, that's why he's still getting better, because he's working like he's a rookie.
That's right. I think he's so much better defensively now. I mean, just thinking about our series, having to go against Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and those guys putting him in pick and roll over and over and over again. and the way he stood up physically, just, arm bar, staying low, even, a guy like Al Horford couldn't like back him down all the way to the rim. And I would say 7-8 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So I think he's worked so hard just on his body and everything that came at him, that people were throwing at him, he's just worked to have an answer for. I thought this was his best defensive year of his career.
Mm-hmm. And I always argue that, but obviously people say that's your guy, you're taking up for him. But I always tell guys, like, Steph's not a bad defender. And that's part of my argument when I just announced he's the greatest point guard of all time, whatever you want to call it, point guard, two guard, but the best point guard of all time. And someone was talking about Magic, and I'm watching Winning Time, and I'm watching It's Magic on Apple TV. Like, I'm diving into my homework of players, and I didn't realize Magic was the weak sister. That's what we call the duck, Evan. Like, we gonna attack the weak sister.
Yeah.
Magic was the weak sister. I didn't realize that.
I saw
and
a
when
thread.
I
saw a thread. I think I sent it to you via Twitter, and they were kind of going after it was kind of favoring towards the weak sister thing or the lemon. But I mean, Magic was the GOAT. You know what I mean?
Yeah, until last week.
And there you go. I grew up in LA watching Magic. That was my team, the Lakers and Magic and Kareem and James Worthy and Coop. And I mean, that was an incredible team. But yeah, both Magic and Bird would always guard the weakest offensive player, just to save them, because they were, they both had to do so much offensively. But yeah, Magic, he didn't want to guard anybody.
Now, kind of going to, speaking of dynasties, and you've seen kind of each dynasty, not end, because the Spurs dynasty never really ended, and ours hasn't ended. We just won one. But talking about the 18-19 season and how that was a really tough year, which was the third year of that run with that team. And then you would always speak about it. The Last Dance was the third year of that run as well. So kind of, talk to us in terms of how hard was it to keep the culture alive? And, I know winning cures everything, but suddenly, after we go from the finals, then y'all become the worst team in the league. Right. Kind of like, how did you adjust? Or, do you keep the culture the same? Do you have to make some minor tweaks here and there?
We basically did the exact same thing. I mean, you've been part of it now for a long time. We still played music in practice, still made fun of each other, made fun of ourselves, did birthday videos, invited, the children in, the players' kids to come in and shoot. Like that, all of that is authentic to who we are. And we kept doing that. And it mattered because especially when you're losing, that's when the culture has to matter. That's my feeling. And so I think maybe the best compliment, that I got that year was when we traded like 5 guys at the trade deadline, because we were struggling and we had to get under the tax. You don't want to be a taxpayer when you have the worst record in the league. And so we traded a bunch of guys, and honestly, most of them wanted to stay. And it was such a great compliment to hear that from those guys. Here we were with the worst record in the league, but guys were enjoying the process of learning and growing and getting better and being in a really healthy environment. So that was, in a weird way, kind of really gratifying. Like these guys have enjoyed a season where we got the worst record in the league. We must be doing something right.
You spoke earlier, I believe it's the first year you had KD and obviously the back-to-back championship win team. And you're like, the world would be on fire if you all didn't win. Did you feel any pressure coming in and being like, hey, I know I got loaded guns, but how can I get them to aim the right way? Was there any type of pressure like that, or do you still stay the course and keep it poised and just say, all right, I'm going to take it one day at a time and coach these guys the same way I normally do?
Yeah, I think the beauty of it was we already had a foundation that was there when Kevin arrived. And, we had won one title, lost the next one in the 7th game of the finals. But we had, Andre, Draymond, Steph, Clay. So the foundation was already there. And one of the reasons Kevin came was because of those guys. Probably the main reason he wanted to play with those guys. And right from the beginning, Kevin was, he was all in. I think he enjoyed the way we played. He wanted to play a different style than what he had been playing before, and embraced it all. And that year was, roll the ball out. These guys got it.
Evan, how mad were you, Evan? Talk about that.
No, I remember we were in preseason because for whatever reason, we played y'all like 8 times that year. And I remember we were in preseason. I'm looking at Mo Harkless. I'm like, if you curls, switch this. I think it was like KD taking the ball out. And I'm like, we could switch this and switch that. And when I started looking around, I'm like, it's KD, Clay, Steph, Dre. I'm like, bro, this is a joke. This is so unfair. We can't switch anything. There's literally nothing to. There's no like. There's no advantage to us. Like, you know what I mean? There was no limit. And when you sat there, it was like, I think one night he was 10 for 12, 35 points to go along with the rest of the. I mean, it's just a joke, bro. I mean, it was unfair. It was a joke. It literally ruined like 4 or 5 years of basketball, and but in a good way. Like, it was fun. It was cool to see because, obviously, like, the culture was lit. But it was definitely, I mean, he didn't have to go there. That's for sure.
I'm saying we were breaking assist records. Like, we were, like, playing basketball.
You were supposed to break
way.
assist records. That makes exact sense. You're supposed to break
Ball
assist
was popping.
records. No, it's lit. Y'all look really good. Y'all look really, really good. Y'all are a really, really good basketball team. But I mean, like, when you're going up against, like, it's y'all, then it's, like, Dame, CJ, then it's, like, Evan, Mochi. Like, do y'all celebrate that?
But Myers Leonard had a phantom. But Myers Leonard had a phantom.
He had a Rolls Royce. He had a white Rolls Royce Wraith with red insides. The guts were red, and he had 30 in the first half back in 2018, 2019.
By design, we won. We swept y'all.
Yeah, y'all swept us so much. I just like, God damn.
That was without KD too. So, Coach, I heard this story. I'm not sure if MJ's ever said it around you. He probably didn't, but I worked out with Tim Grover and those guys where MJ was at a lot in Chicago summers. And there was a story, a lot of guys on the team were Air Jordans or brand Jordans, the story is that MJ said, we got these guys. He spoke about Bill Winnington, I think, or Luke Longley. When he missed that shot, he could have went perfect and he missed, and MJ called him a bum or something. MJ was ribbing on him. So we all know how MJ is. So this isn't a hot take. We know MJ actually said this. So for the guys who wore Jordans that were like the Luke Longley, or Ron Harper was really good before the knee injury, or Randy Brown wore Jordans, he would always say, look at these bums wearing my shoes. That's like putting Pirellis on a Toyota. And that's all I could think about. Myers Leonard is my man, good player, right? He don't think all the time when he playing video games, but the man had a Rolls Royce, man. Like, you got to know yourself. Like, we're going to have that conversation one day. Like, you got to know, like, who you are in the league, and, like, everything you do around is surround, like, your position and your stature in the NBA. So if you're, like, a 7th, 8th, 9th man, there's no way you should have a Rolls Royce.
But they don't know that.
No, you're the vet. I taught you to teach them.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. That was my fault because I put the battery in Myers' back. He's like, you think I should get a Rolls? I'm like, hell yeah, turn up. Get a white one. and he, I mean, Myers is a cool dude. Clearly, the Rolls Royce shocked people, but, I mean, he also owned a bunch of, like, outdoor boots and went into the woods, like, on his free time. So does that make you feel better?
No, it just I won't go there. Let's talk about Clay, Coach. And Clay's had an incredible comeback, and Clay is so, I don't even know how to explain Clay. Like, he's so oblivious to things, but you forget he's a deep thinker, because he was talking about, I'm coming back and we're going to win a chip. And I'll be like, Clay, you're oblivious, bro. You know how hard it is? Like, you can't just say that. Don't just say it. But we actually just did it again. And like, he had a hell of a celebration. He lost his hat.
He's
his
about to get
championship
arrested
hat.
at one point.
Yeah, he lost his championship hat. And then he did the Michael Jackson dance. He tripped. Did you see him run over the girl on accident?
Yes.
And then he what was the other one? And then he lost his ring and found it again. So he had a really good celebration. But the thing that stood out to me the most, and I don't know if I should believe it because his dad's a huge Lakers fan. His dad's been trying to get him out of here for a while. I'm sorry, Big Mike, but I'm calling you out. But he did say something meaningful in terms of, you know, he wanted to be like MJ and he wanted to stay with the same organization for his entire year. And he didn't want to be coached by anyone else. And I think that's huge. But for you, you know, what does that say about, you know, kind of the culture you've created and, you know, kind of how guys feel about you? Because you're like normal and you're super humble. So I never hear you go to your ego side.
It felt good when Clay said that. He actually said it. We were doing the NBA TV post game after Game 6 in Boston together. Mm-hmm. So we were at that panel, and he said it then, and I think he said it again. And it meant everything to me because I mean you just said it. Like Clay is he's an eccentric, but he's also super quiet, and mm-hmm. he's way deeper than anybody realizes, but he doesn't really express, you know, some of that emotion very often. So that was really meaningful for me because mm-hmm. I loved coaching him and all you guys and to be part of this and to be still going at this point and to hear Clay say that, that's meaningful because it shows me how much he cares and that it mm-hmm. matters, you know, that we keep things the same. And I love that.
Yeah. Well, he's shooting. That's keeping things the same.
Well, how you feel? Like, obviously, Clay said, you know, such nice things, and his personality is a little bit different. Outside looking in, you always hear the little gentle ribbings, or, you know, you and Draymond, you can see on TV. Sometimes you guys go back and forth, and I don't think it's in a demonstrative way, but you both are competitors. You know what I'm saying? You both are tough guys. How do you manage that relationship with chill minds like Steph and Clay, or sometimes even Dre? He has his moments. But then, you know, you go right back to Draymond where, you know, you guys might punch each other in the chest to show you love each other. Like, do you just wait till, you know, you're on your deathbed for him to say thank you? Or are you just like, or is there a love language that you understand?
No, there's a lot of love there. And you know, it's, we've had plenty of conversations, you know, where he's you know, told me how much I've meant to him and vice versa. And then we've had plenty of near fights that Andre has witnessed. And, you know, Draymond and I are both super competitive. We obviously, you know, show it in different ways. Like, he's much more demonstrative. Yeah. But Andre, you've seen me, like, I'll snap, you know, and I'll, mm-hmm. you know, whether it's breaking a clipboard or whatever, like, I have a tipping point. And I am incredibly competitive. And that's one of the reasons Draymond and I butt heads, because when we see something differently and we start butting heads over it, there's no stopping either one of us. And so mm-hmm. That dynamic has been an interesting one for the team. I think it's honestly been healthy for the team. It keeps us on edge a little bit. And I think the last couple of years, it's really softened quite a bit, just because we've been together for so long. We've been through so much. And I respect what Draymond has meant to the team so much and to the group. I think I've learned how to coach him better than I did, say, 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
well,
go
ahead.
Does coming to blows with MJ in practice make you prepare for a Draymond Green like 20-something years later? Like, are you like?
I'll answer for you. I'll answer for you. Listen, man, nobody's on MJ's level. All right, so I hated that question because, and we're gonna put this on the pod too. I'm not editing
number
this.
23s out there, baby. There has to be a comparison.
Okay.
The conversation has to be there. All right.
There's no conversation.
You're gonna see Draymond before I do. So,
Coach, Draymond is what do you call it when, you know, someone is causing division amongst the family? This dude has a wedding and he doesn't even tell anybody what day it is. And you have an important wedding and you told us a year in advance. When's his wedding? The same exact time. You have an important wedding this summer, correct?
Oh, yes.
To go to.
Yeah,
we all do.
Yeah, my daughter's big. Yeah.
And my wife has been thinking about this wedding for 300 days.
Yeah, she told me I'm supposed to meet y'all in Europe after.
Draymond, you have to do a better job of scheduling because people schedule, and then when you come and tell us verbally, not with a proper invitation, that your wedding is a certain day, it's like we don't have plans. And Draymond is my brother, but Draymond is going to be pissed at me if I don't come to his wedding. So we're all trying to figure out what to do.
Is it on the same day?
It's the day after.
Oh, man. I didn't know that.
I just found out.
I haven't gotten my invitation yet either. So
I haven't gotten my invitation yet. He hasn't sent out his invitations. This is typical Draymond, but I love you to death. But he makes things tough for us, but we love him. But so this is my way of getting back at him. I'm sick of it, Draymond. All right, moving on. Okay, so I'm gonna give you this great story I had. It was right after we won. I'm with Jacob Rubin, I'm with Q, and I'm with Khalid Robinson, right? And this is after we were celebrating at the arena in Boston, and it's, I don't know, what time did we leave? 4 a.m., 4:30? Yeah. Like, it was late. So we're in the car, and I'm inebriated. So when I'm inebriated, my mind works like really, really well. Like, I'm thinking into the future. So I'm telling Lid, I'm like, Lid, you know how the Spurs, they have their coaches and they kind of like took over the league and they're getting all the hires. Ime just got the job here. And if you work for the Spurs, Mike Brown came from the Spurs. And, you know, it was North Carolina was before that. And Larry Brown was a part of that whole thing with Kansas. And like your disciples get jobs. So that got me thinking, I'm telling Lid, that's us now. Like we're next, you know, with Kenny getting a job and he gave it back. I want to talk about that. But Mike Brown's getting a job and Luke Walton got a job, head coaching job twice. And then Alvin Gentry's gotten a few coaching jobs since he came with us. Do you take pride in kind of how your assistants are sought out there and kind of like what's your thinking with that when guys go on to become head coaches?
I do take pride in that, but I want to go back to how you started. You said when you're inebriated, you think clearly. You know that all drunk people think clearly, right?
But that was a thought. I'm telling Lid, we got to take advantage of this. We just won another championship. We're the new level. Like we've set the bar with excellence. So you're those guys that we used to talk about. Like, oh, this guy's next. This guy's next. That guy's getting a job. That guy's getting a job. Yeah. You know, Budenholzer got the job. We were talking about all these guys. I'm like, that's us now. Y'all got to go out there and get jobs. Like, let's get to it. Like, let's keep building. So it was just kind of, you know, letting all the guys know, you know, we're not getting comfortable. Like, we about to take over the league. That's kind of how it started. Like, I got this grand plan to take over the NBA. If they let me, I might get myself in trouble because I'm too honest. But I got this plan how I'm going to take over the league. And I'm telling him, you know, this is what we're doing.
No, it's really flattering. And I honestly, one of the things I've been thinking about the last few years, you know, as I've learned in the coaching business is if you can hire guys who have a chance to be a head coach, it's actually really healthy because number one, you're hiring really talented people. But number two, the movement is good. Like internally, you know, if you have a guy who eventually gets a head coaching position, he takes a couple of people with him. You know, you elevate a couple of people, you bring in new blood for your own organization. And I think every organization needs change. You can't just stay the same every year. And so you got to bring in a few new players to re-energize the roster. And you got to bring in possibly, you know, a couple of new coaches. And so I try to hire guys like Kenny and Mike who either have been head coaches or, you know, like Jama, who I think is going to be a head coach, like the most talented people you can get, you get them. And then if they move on, it's not bad at all. In fact, it's good. It's great for them. It's great for us too.
Now I got an Evan question. Were any of the assistants or guys trying to move up, or any of them pissed at Kenny for going to get a job and coming back and kind of disrupting their double hire, their double promotion?
You're talking to You're asking.
No, I'm asking, were any of your guys pissed that Kenny came back because they were expecting a double promotion because two guys left?
Of course. I would have asked for my shit still. I'm like, nah, I'm moving on the first, so I need that extra.
You're gonna have to ask those guys, Andre, because we've barely seen each other since it happened.
It's true.
So, but he might have taken a couple of guys with him. You never know how this stuff pans out.
I'm gonna ask Jacob Rubin.
So I have to ask too. Obviously, I mean, it might be an old question, and tons of people have asked it. I've never heard it, but what's the most important thing that you learned from obviously your mentors of Phil Jackson and obviously Coach Pop on and off the court? Because I feel like
and Lute Olson,
off
don't
the
forget
court,
about
you're pretty
Lute.
chill and calm to a most extent, like Phil, obviously. And I think during the seasons, you're willing to try a lot of different lineups and things like that. And then off the court, like Popovich, I always respected how much you spoke up for what was going on in society and everything like that, good, bad, or indifferent. Your voice, your platform, everything has always been, clutch and right on time when it comes down to talking, real world problems.
Well, the advice that both of them gave me from the beginning was to be myself, and you can't be anybody else. And if you try to do that, guys are going to figure it out quickly. They'll know you're a phony. So you got to be yourself. What I liked about both guys is they always had great perspective on the world. It was about beyond just basketball, even though they were great basketball coaches. I think part of the reason they were great coaches is because they had other interests. They were both avid readers. They both talked a lot about world events, current events. They addressed issues with their players that were meaningful in their lives. And so I had a great example with those two coaches. And so when I became the Warriors coach, I wanted to express my own personality, my own values with our team. And then I would say, as far as the advocacy and social activism and that kind of stuff, it probably took me a few years to really, feel confident enough to speak out on things and to, use my platform. And my biggest issue that I really support is gun safety, given that I lost my dad to gun violence, and we have such a terrible issue in our country now with gun violence. And so I do a lot of work off the court with, various gun safety, gun violence prevention groups. And that's what I advocate for, publicly when I use my platform.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And, I almost forgot Willie Green was another guy. So, and when I say Willie Green, it reminded me when you said it took you a few years to get your footing. And we had Willie Green on the pod when we were in Dallas, and I asked Willie a few questions in terms about being African-American and head coach and the number of statistics. And, I wouldn't say he was reluctant, but, he had to answer it a certain way. And I thought just of that, like, oh, he's young still as a coach, and he's got to make sure, he's doing the right things, staying out the way, staying out the news, and it's just all focused. But I think he has a great potential to really voice himself because he's a thoughtful person as well. But I'm just so glad you said that, in terms of having self-awareness. It took you a few years, but obviously.
I just want to add real quick, like I've had plenty of black coaches tell me, that they appreciate, some of my advocacy because frankly they can't say the same things that I say, and that more than anything just made me feel worse, like it was, I know it was meant to be a compliment, but it's it's just, it makes me feel bad when I think about the circumstances that the black coaches have to coach under. I mean, it's just a reflection of society in general, right. Just the difficulty of the journey of black people compared to white people in this country, but how it manifests itself in coaching is pretty profound. And I've had plenty of black coaches share that with me, and it's pretty moving to hear that.
Yeah. But even as a player, I think you never understand where maybe Dre always speaks highly of you, and we always joke, call him Malcolm X or whatever. But like when it comes down to it, you know, as a player, we played for a lot of coaches that was a different color than us that never really cared to dive deeper into those backgrounds or those issues, or even see the difference between, you know, an athlete or who we are on the court or what we face growing up our whole life, or showing sensitivity towards what our family faces. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I feel like that's what I think players, or what's very rare. I played for a lot of coaches growing up that were, you know, obviously white or whatever. And sometimes when I look back on it, you know, one thing I think I appreciated the most is when they understood me as a person overall. And I think that's what's, you know, Dre might tell you back in the day, even in his book, sometimes he struggled to get that same type of empathy from his coach, you know?
Well, I appreciate the compliment. The reality is, that, you know, if you have a good, healthy environment as a team, it's no different from like a classroom where the teacher learns from the students, just like vice versa, right? It just becomes about collaboration and throwing ideas around and interesting conversation. And so I've been on the other side of that too. I mean, I'll never forget whatever it was like 3 years ago, Andre, where, you know, we were talking about social justice issues and the African American experience in this country, and you said, Coach, have you ever heard about the Tulsa race riots? And I said, no. And you said, check it out, like go Google. And I Googled it when I got home. I was embarrassed. You know, I was like totally embarrassed that as a, you know, college educated 53-year-old man at the time, like I didn't know this story. And so, you know, I use that as an example of, in a healthy environment, like everybody is offering different opinions, different thoughts, different perspectives, and you all learn from each other. And I think that's what I really enjoy about coaching, is that it's a collaboration, but it's a chance for me to learn from players, not just vice versa.
And that was a great article that my wife shared with me, and then I just started sharing around to the folks that I know. It was the article, and I think the Atlantic. It was talking about why we're getting dumber over the last 10 years. We're getting dumber and dumber.
Yeah, you said that to me too.
It was incredible how, and this is just the point I'm making. In order for us to become smarter, we have to have conversations of different perspectives and different opinions. Like the Republicans and the Democrats should really express how they feel, but come to a solution out of it. But now we've gotten to a point in time in humanity, or whatever you call it, where we're getting more fragmented because people are saying, I only want to hear what I believe in. And everyone's saying that. Therefore, we get stuck in this rut, and no one's getting smarter. So, but to kind of piggyback off that, I was really glad that Anthony Edwards spoke about you recently. And I know you told me the story, and I haven't said anything about it, but this was a while ago. You told me the story with him, or maybe it was Bob told me the story about Anthony Edwards, and he finally spoke about it. It's been making its rounds on social media, where he really spoke about how you approached him after his pre-draft workout. Like his pre-draft workout was pretty bad from what he said, and you approached him and said, listen, man, if you want to be successful in this league, like that's not it. You got all the talent in the world. Like, why waste your time? And he was just so open about it. And even though, and he said it after they played us, he said, you changed the trajectory of my career. Like, and he gave us 40 or 50 that night. He was going for it. It didn't matter. But that kid's incredible. And I think that says a lot about you as well. So what is it, you know, how do you go about letting a guy know something so blunt and honest like that, you know, especially with the way these kids are coming up and not really being held accountable at when they're projected to be the next Michael Jordan at age 12?
Yeah, I think that's where, you know, having experience, you know, with Steph and, you know, your group, with the Bulls, with Spurs, like I have automatic credibility with a guy, you know, like Anthony Edwards, who's coming into the league, because he's been watching. And so I feel more confident being able to just say, hey, this is my experience. I want you to be great, whether we draft you or not. Because I want every player to be great. Like that's the whole point of what we're doing. As coaches, like we want to get the best out of everybody, but we also in the league, we want great players. The more great players the league has, the stronger the league is.
Yes.
So I just feel like, if I have a chance with, to help somebody, I should try to help him. And it seemed to me that he was a great kid. Like we had dinner after the workout and he had all this charisma and you could tell how excited he was to join the league, but he had some stuff to learn and he embraced it. And like you said, he gave us 50 and then he came up to me after the game. He's like, Coach, thanks for changing, you changed everything for me. I appreciate it. I said, if I knew you were going to give me 50, I wouldn't have said anything.
Right.
But no, he's great. I love that young guy and he's going to be a hell of a player. Already is.
Yeah, he's got a new movie out too, Hustle on Netflix. Yeah. I'm gonna try to watch it tonight. I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to check it out eventually. I got other things. I'm for sure gonna try to check it out in the next couple of weeks for sure. Coach, I was gonna ask just a couple of random fan questions. So obviously, I said earlier I'm from Chicago. Who do you think was better, the Bulls dynasty or the Warriors?
And I got my answer, so you can answer and I'll answer right behind you.
I want to hear it for sure. I think everybody wants to hear it.
Well, MJ is the greatest of all time. That's
okay.
That's a no-brainer. That's an easy one. I just think it's two totally different eras. So, maybe it's a cop-out, but it's hard to compare, Like when you try to actually say, all right, who would have guarded who, the rules are different. The rules are totally different. We couldn't play zone back then. We couldn't overload the strong side, and we couldn't do all the stuff we do now. So it's hard to say.
When you broke the record, best record ever in NBA history, did any of your old teammates hit you up and kind of joke around with you for breaking the record, or what?
Yeah. I heard from Scotty and
oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they reached out and they were probably secretly hoping we lost in the finals too, so that we didn't back it up.
It sound like Scotty. He still owed me some push-ups from a golf trip where I beat his ass. I can't wait till I see Scotty again. That's my man. I love Scotty. Are we all set, Evan?
Yeah, well, that's true. That's all I wanted to know. He gave us 2 hour and something of his time after a championship run.
58 minutes exactly. I was timing it. And next week our next episode, ET, we're gonna have that discussion. It's 2 discussions. One is who was the best team of all time, and I could break down the Bulls and the Warriors, and who was the better. Okay, Coach, you can answer this question. Your opinion: who was the better all-time team? 2012 Olympic team or 92 Olympic team?
LeBron.
I hate questions like this.
That's a good question though, because
that's a great question. That's
a good question.
That's very good question though. You can
that's different from the team. You can answer that one.
No, but
I've been thinking about this for a long time.
Yeah, think about that. That's official.
I have not been thinking about it at all, so I'm gonna let you answer it, Andre. You can answer your own question.
All right, next week we're gonna break it down. It might be 2 episodes apiece. One is the best team, and the one's the best overall, the Olympic team, 92 or 2012. And I got some really good stories. So I really appreciate the time. I'll come and hang out with you soon. We'll play some golf. I owe you. I haven't played good golf around you yet, so I'm gonna get my game right.
Do it. Yeah. Let's do it.
I'll see you at the parade next year. All right.
All right, take care, Coach.
Okay. You guys.
Yep.